Can we start?
Yes, we can start.
Okay, Raman. Yes. Hi everybody. I just want to introduce Dr. Anish. Dr. Anish is an assistant professor at Toronto Medical College at Community Medicine. He is part of the COVID expert committee for the Kerala government as well. Rest all he will just introduce and start himself. Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, all. I think I am audible, isn't it? Okay, it's fine.
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay. Now I was actually thinking that to make a presentation, but I think it is fine if you just ask some questions because I can start from that. Because basically my presentations are technical and sometimes this much technical details may not be needed for you. The presentation is with me, so I can actually show you in between if that kind of a concern is emerging. Can we start with some question answer sessions? That can you raise some basic concerns of you, or rather I would speak about some basic things about this disease. And we have got actually our experience is based on what happened in Kerala. Kerala is a state where the outbreak was actually contained up to an extent. We actually got our first cases, maybe first in India. In January itself, we got 3 students who came directly from Wuhan, but there was no contacts positivity from these 3 cases. And then what happened was after a few weeks, there was a few individuals came from Italy. And from these people, there actually developed a cluster. And so many people were coming from abroad, and we are actually facing a small outbreak during that point of time. What happened after May 4th was actually a very important day for us for this outbreak is concerned. Because from May 4th onwards, actually people were started coming from abroad, and so many expatriates were coming from outside, and now we have got small clusters of diseases here and there in Kerala. And we are actually, today is the day we have got maximum number of cases. Today our number of cases actually crossed 1,000. This is first time we are actually facing more than 1,000 cases in a single day. That is the importance of this particular day. You may be knowing a lot of things about this virus, and I will just show you how this is actually spreading. So I am sure that a lot of you may be knowing these things also.
Yeah, hello.
I am not actually, my slides are here, but I am not actually, I am trying to show you my slides.
Okay, no problem. We will wait.
Okay. One second.
Sir, one basic question. So you told the first time crossed 1,000. This is on per day or until now the total?
No, this is per day, the number of cases per day.
Okay.
Till now we have got somewhere around 10,000 cases total.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I think now I can share my slides.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, can you see my slides?
Yeah.
This is actually something in between of my presentation. So I am actually trying to start from here because the previous slides are based on, it's actually on about the virus. So that may not be very important for us in this discussion. This is the way by which this disease is actually transmitted, or this is how the disease is actually coming to a particular locality. Suppose you think about Bangalore as a closed population. Closed population means nobody is coming from outside and nobody is actually going out. That is an ideal situation, but that may not be the case. But for theoretically, we will consider a population as a closed population to apply these kinds of assumptions. So suppose there are a lot of people, say 25 lakhs people are there, or 50 lakhs people are there in Bangalore, and this is actually a closed population, and nobody is actually affected by the disease till now. What is going to happen is some people, that can be one person or that can be a group of people coming to this particular city with infection. So that is this red mark. Actually, this is an I compartment. I means infectious. These people are actually infectious. So now these people can actually interact with susceptible individuals in the city, and a part of the susceptible individuals are actually becoming exposed. That is E. They are exposed to this virus. And maybe after some time, these exposed people are actually exhibiting the signs and symptoms. Sometimes a large number of people may not exhibit the signs and symptoms at all, but maybe a small proportion of people will exhibit the signs and symptoms. And it will take at an average of 5 days for the signs and symptoms to come out. It can be as close or as low as 2 days, or it can be as wide as 14 days. Sometimes you may not having any signs and symptoms at all. That can also be there. And now these people are actually coming to this phase that is infectious. This compartment means the people in this compartment can actually give infection to others because they are infectious. How much time they will be in this phase? Maybe for another 10 days, maximum of 10 days, they will be in this phase. And after 10 days, they will actually move to another phase known as the R phase, that is recovered phase. So when these people are actually infectious, they will be highly infectious during first a few days of their infection. And then the infectiousness is actually slightly reduced. That is why the I compartment is again split into I1 and I2. Depending upon the modeling, you can actually split in many compartments, I1, I2, I3, something like that. Anyway, after a particular time, it is actually, we think that it is 10 days. The people are actually moving to the R compartment, that is recovered. We hope that the recovered people are actually immune for this disease. They are not again susceptible for this disease. And when these people are actually mingling with the community, the chance of transmission is actually becoming less. That is known as herd immunity. Herd immunity means when the infected or the people having the disease, after they are actually cured of the disease, is actually mingling with the community, then there will be less chance of infection. That is meant by herd immunity. This is the pattern that is actually happening. People are exposed to infection, they are getting infected. After a few days, they will become, either they will be asymptomatic and they will carry forward, they will actually move forward, and sometimes they will be becoming symptomatic. Most often, even in the people who is symptomatic will be less symptomatic. Their symptoms will last for maybe 1 week or so. Fever can be there, cough, maybe dyspnea, slight breathlessness, or something like that. But a few people, maybe a 5% of them, are actually going for a severe kind of infection, and some people can actually die. That is a situation. The chance of the severity is actually directly proportional to your age. Directly proportional means you can actually exponentially increase with the increasing age. Maybe the most protected group severe infection, and that more risk is the elderly people. That is one finding that we have noticed in case of SARS coronavirus 2. Another one is if you have got something like a chronic morbidity like diabetes, hypertension, sometimes if you are a smoker, if you are obese, or you have got a cured, maybe a treated cancer or something like that, you are more prone for severe kind of infection and death. So that is the issue. It is actually a problem with the community as a whole. It is not an individualistic problem, because we have got a lot of corona infections. Some of the corona infections are actually very severe. There are 3 types of major coronavirus infections, which is very severe. One is popularly known as SARS, that is severe acute respiratory syndrome. And in this disease, the mortality rate is actually 10%. And second most important coronaviral disease is MERS. MERS is Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, where the chance of death is somewhere around 30%. But in SARS coronavirus 2, that is our COVID-19, the chance of death as a whole for an individual is somewhere around 0.5 to 1%. Even though you have got infection, the chance of death is, again, it is maybe something comparable to a dengue fever. The chance of death is not more than that of a dengue fever. That is the one thing we have to remember. So there is no point in becoming panic about the disease. But the problem with this disease is its potential to transmit. That means if you allow the infection, it is not something that you are going to die or you are going to become hospitalized because of this infection. But you can act as a person or a link in the whole chain of transmission. And from you, somebody may get infected. And from that person, another person will get infected. And in this CD, somebody can be knocked down. So our responsibility is actually to stop the spread. It is not because as an individual, you are at high risk of getting the infection. And even though you are infected, you have got a high risk of death or severe kind of hospitalization or something. But it is actually our responsibility to stop the transmission. That is the most important message I want to convey. That if you just check the individual risk, the risk will be much less. But if you check the community risk, as the disease is actually transmitting in a faster rate, and it can reach to many number of people, large chunk of people, and the total number of hospitalizations and deaths that is happening out of this massive spread is innumerable, and the system cannot afford that. So that is the real issue of COVID. So it is actually our responsibility to prevent the transmission and break the chain. So that is the basic idea about COVID-19 and how it is actually different from other diseases. And I think I can take questions so that while answering these questions, I can actually just discuss more things.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. I suggest people to start asking questions so that he can explain more, because.
Okay. Actually, how much time you are going to live with this disease is basically how fast our vaccination strategies are actually evolving. That these are the two related questions. So now our vaccination ideas are actually moving in a very good pace, and the results are actually promising. So at least we have got 5 vaccine candidates moving to phase 3 trials, and the results of 3 of them in the phase 2 trial is out, and these vaccine candidates has got excellent results according to the publications. So we hope that the vaccine will be found out and the safety, efficacy, and all these things will be assured by the end of this year. And we may be able to get the vaccine in a massive scale, maybe by the middle of next year. Or if you are becoming too optimistic, it can happen maybe by March or April of 2021. That means definitely at any cost, we have to live with this virus for another maybe 9 months or so. So that is a very important thing that we have to understand, because we do not have any other goal and we have to adjust with this disease. So this is actually very important to live with this disease, because we cannot actually freely mingle with others, because this disease is actually coming, or it is actually transmitting from people to people in a particular fashion. I will show you something related to this question. Okay, when you are talking about the epidemiology of COVID-19, there is a very important factor which is known as reproduction number, or R. Sometimes you may be knowing it about R0 or R0. That is a basic reproduction number. What does it mean by basic reproduction number is the average number of people getting infected from a person, an infected person. Here you can see that each and every person in this cohort or this group is actually is infecting another 3. This person is infecting 3, and again every person is actually infecting 3. And if you try to contain things, suppose this branch is cut off because of some other strategies, and your basic reproduction number is actually coming to 2, and you can actually cut off this branch. That means if this is the model, any kind of intervention will have some kind of an impact on the disease transmission. But the real problem with COVID-19 is that the disease is not transmitting like this. Actually, the disease is transmitting something like this. That means one person can infect. So this person can infect 7 other people, but since this person is not infecting at all, this person is actually infecting only 1. This kinds of difference is there. So we cannot predict from which person the outbreak is going to, who is going to create the outcome or outbreak, we do not know. So here, if you want to contain the disease and if you want to check the spread of this disease, everybody has to take care of themselves, or you have to break the chain at every possible points. And so, because in any point, for example, if you have got a market in Bangalore, the disease, the whole people coming to that market can be infected because of this kind of a super spreading event that is happening in market. So the mantra that we usually use, especially to break the chain, is actually what in Kerala it is known as SMS. SMS is sanitization, masking, and social distancing. These are the 3 things that we can actually have in our life while we are moving with this disease. Most among these 3 is actually mask. So masks are actually very important in preventing disease, because now we are recognizing the importance of airborne infection also. So we have to wear a good quality mask, because this infection can spread mainly it is actually spreading either through droplets or through air. Mainly it is actually coming through droplet. So what is meant by a droplet infection? Okay, this is actually I have taken from WHO site, that they are actually explaining while you are sneezing or coughing, or even you respire in normal course, the vapors or your saliva came out of your mouth or nose in 2 forms. One is it is actually coming as big droplets, more than 5 micron in size, that will suddenly drop. Second is actually small droplets that is less than 5 microns in size, which is known as droplet nuclei, and that can stay in atmosphere for quite some time. So in most of the cases, the infection is transmitted by big droplets, because big droplets can have large amount of virus in these drops. So it is very important that this, if you are actually coming in close contact with an affected person, there is a high risk of getting infection. And second one is, sometimes you will be in a location or in a place where the air contains large amount of virus, maybe in a hospital room. Sometimes it may be in a vehicle, or sometimes in any closed space. If there is people having the disease is there, the air may contain also this large amount of virus, and this disease can spread through air. So to prevent both these things, one thing that we can actually use is a good quality mask. And mask is the most important thing that is going to prevent you from getting infected while you are moving with the disease. That is one thing. And second one is the hand sanitization, because definitely the infections are actually moving from your hands. It is actually usually when we teach our children, we usually say, okay, whenever you are coughing you just use a kerchief. If you do not have a kerchief, you just cuff on your hand. But now we are actually not actually advising children like this. If you do not have a kerchief, better you have a kerchief with you. If you do not have a kerchief, you use some part of your cloth, maybe your shirt, to cuff, or you use your elbows or your shoulders to cuff. Do not cuff on your hands, because your hands are not belonging to you. It is actually of that of your friends. So you may catch the virus in your hand and you will hand it over to your friends. That is a possibility. So hand hygiene actually very important, because your hands are responsible for the infection to others. Sometimes there is something called an auto inoculation. That means from what you have received in your hand, you yourself will be inoculating to your mouth and nose. So hand hygiene is actually the second, the most important step, that whenever you are going out of your home, because we do not know that sometimes your home may be a hub. Maybe your wife or your husband may be infected, and you may be carrying virus out of your home. So before you leaving your home and after you coming back, or as you are coming back to your home, definitely you have to make your hands clean. That is very important. And the hand hygiene should be done soon after any kind of an exposure that can happen. For example, you put your fingers on your nose or something like that, or you are actually, nowadays people are not actually having handshakes. Suppose you have got a handshake, or when after a meeting you are just coming to your car, you just keep a bottle of sanitizer in your car so that you can use it. So this is a second step, that you keep your hands clean so that you will not give infection to others, and the infection from others will not reach to your nose and mouth. So this is a second one. And third step is in SMS is the social distancing or physical distancing. That means even though your hands are clean and if you wear a mask, but if you have got a very close exposure to a highly contagious person, you can get infected. So whenever possible, you keep a distance with people. That ideally it is actually 2 meters, because there are some studies that whenever some people, suppose a person highly contagious is actually sneezing, or the viruses are actually coming from his nose, the big droplets that will not last in atmosphere more than 150 milliseconds. That means 1/6 of a second. And it will not actually settle beyond 2 meters. That is why we insist that when you are moving to market, or when you are actually waiting for something in front of a shop, you have a distance of 2 meters in between. So these are the 3 things that we have to practice, maybe at least for 9 months, so that at that point of time the vaccine may be available for us. Some of the vaccine trials are very promising. Among them, the most promising one is actually that of Oxford University. They are making a vaccine in association with AstraZeneca, a multinational medical company. The AstraZeneca has got some connection with the Serum Institute of India, and sometimes Indians may get vaccine maybe early in next. Anyway, it will take another 8 or 9 months.
1 minute, let me see. Yeah, Dr. Anish, there is a question. Is it safe to go for regular hospital visits, like maybe foot pain, or will online consultation help in such cases?
If we are a doctor, we have got an additional risk of getting an infection. But as we are fighting against the disease, definitely we have to take the risk. That is one thing. So, but better we have to protect ourselves. Some of the interesting findings that we have noticed in cases among doctors and nurses, among doctors affected by COVID-19 in India, now it is somewhere around 200 doctors are affected by the disease. And the doctors directly treating COVID patients are actually less in this cohort. The doctors not directly taking care of the patients are actually more Why? Because when you know that there is among these groups, surgeons are actually at a higher risk. Why surgeons are actually at a higher risk? Because COVID patients are actually going to physician and people, ID specialist and all. Then why the surgeons are at risk? Because surgeons are actually thinking that a person is coming to them for surgery or because of some wound or something are not affected by COVID. But that is not the case. Anybody can be affected by COVID. As far as we know now, that 70 to 80% of COVID cases are asymptomatic. That means a person do not having any COVID symptom is actually coming with an accident in front of you, can be a COVID patient. So we have to be very careful. If you are actually using a good quality mask, for a doctor, it may be an N95 mask. If you use an N95 mask, you are actually protected to an extent that you may not be having a sufficiently or significantly higher risk compared to other people in the community. But definitely we have to move ahead. We have to go for practice and all those things. If you as an occupation, and if you want to go to hospital, definitely you have to go to hospital. Sometimes if as a patient, if you want to go to a hospital, you just think about the risk and benefit. If you have to go to hospital, then if you have to take a risk that there is a good chance that somebody else will be there with maybe COVID in that group of patients, maybe there in that hospital, and definitely you have to take a risk. Better if you are a person, elderly person, or with other comorbidities, if you can avoid a hospital visit, that will be better. That is one thing. And third one is a layman who is actually going to hospital to visit somebody or his relative is in this hospital. So just for a casual visit, please do not go, because hospitals can become epicenters at any point of time. Another observation that we have made from the doctors group who are actually affected by COVID, we found that the women are affected less compared to men. It is actually out of proportion to the sex ratio among doctors in India. Women are actually protected. Again, it is actually indicating the risk-taking behavior of men. That means if you are going to work in a hospital, or if you are going to be in a hospital as a patient, you take enough personal protective measures, and you think that each and every person is actually having COVID, even though they do not manifest the symptom. That is one thing. Another thing that we have noticed in Trivandrum, especially Trivandrum Medical College is actually now, we have got a cluster of cases in Trivandrum. And we noticed that it is not from the patient the doctors are getting infected. From other doctors, the doctor is actually getting infected. That means from a patient, one single doctor will be getting infected, maybe because of some problem with his PPE or something. But from that doctor, another doctor is getting infected. Because one doctor will treat patient very cautiously, but that doctor may not treat his colleague with that kind of a caution. And there is a lot of sociological things that are there between hospitals. Doctors and nurses and attendants, the different groups, they actually mingle each other. They just go for a tea in maybe a small tea shop available in that hospital, and they will share tea. And that point of time, definitely they are not wearing masks. And those kinds of things are actually increasing the risks of infection among hospitals. So we have to take sufficient care. That is all. We are not suggesting that as a doctor or a nurse should not be going mute.
Sorry. Yeah, it's about mask. What kind of mask really, which you already told, N95 mask would be good for those who are going to hospital. But for a layman who is within the society, we are walking or we are going to office, is N95 is really required, or a double layered cotton mask or a surgical mask is good enough?
This is actually a very important question. Even CDC is actually recommending cloth mask for layman to use, basically because the other masks will create some kind of problems, biomedical waste generation and all those things. You cannot reuse a surgical mask. You have to just throw it away. And if you are not taking keen you are not keen to discard it properly, it can create a lot of problem. So for a layman, a cloth mask is enough. That is actually the guideline of CDC and WHO. But now more and more evidence is generated on the airborne transmission of the disease. If this disease is entirely transmitted by droplet infection, definitely a single layer cloth mask is enough. But here the scientists are actually, again, they are thinking whether it is enough if there is a chance of this airborne infection. So the important thing is how much air can directly enter through your mask. Then whenever you choose your mask, you can choose definitely a cloth mask, but you have to choose a mask, maybe a double layer or a triple layer cloth mask. A single layer cloth mask may not be enough. Or you can go for a double layer or a triple layer surgical mask. That is possible, that you can use, but you have to take care of how you are going to discard it. Do not actually throw it to and N95 is not required for a layman, because one thing is N95, we are actually facing a shortage of N95. Better we preserve it for people who are at higher risk compared to a layman. So we can actually, and another thing, now today we have got some other guideline that do not use N95 with a valve. You might have seen some mask with small projection on the front or the side of the mask. You should not use that, because what this mask is doing, this will filter the air coming to you. You will be protected, but your expired air will be coming through that valve and it will be going out. So that means if somebody is actually talking to you, you are not actually protecting the other person. The philosophy of wearing mask is I am protecting you and you are protecting me. Sometimes I may be asymptomatic, totally asymptomatic, but I may harbor virus. And if you are using a mask with a valve, you are not protecting the other who is actually coming in contact with you. So now in Western countries, they are actually totally abandoned the use of mask with valve. And today we have got a suggestion from Central Department, the Government of India, that you should not promote mask with valves. So better do not use mask with a valve. If everybody is using a mask, a cloth mask is enough, but you just check whether there is. Thomas, again mute. You are mute.
How to differentiate a normal flu and a COVID fever? Is it any, that's actually we all heard about, but still there is a question.
It is almost impossible to differentiate between a normal flu and a COVID. Okay. But there is something, because people are now, even there's a large chunk of people are using masks, and many people are using hand sanitizers and hand washing and all. Common flu is transmitting through this way. Common flu and COVID-19 is actually using a single window to reach you. That is either through air or through your hands. If you are going to protect the airborne or a droplet transmission using mask, and you are actually trying to stop transmission through your hand, then the common flu will be actually much less. If suppose in Bangalore or any part of India for that matter, if the disease is very rampant, you have to think that any kind of flu is COVID. That could be COVID. So if you do not have a high, maybe a severe symptom, you can actually take rest in your home. But for other people, you just think that you have got COVID. We do not have any other go. And another thing, suppose you are getting a common cold, you have to think that your precaution is not enough, because your fort has got so many loopholes. Then why you develop this common cold? Okay, common cold can be allergic cough. Some people are actually allergic to atmosphere. That is not infectious. Suppose I am actually asthmatic and I have got allergic rhinitis in between once in 2 weeks or something. That may not be infectious. You need not mind that. But if a person is developing a common flu, as Thomas was actually mentioning, if you are developing a flu at this point of time, I will say that you are an irresponsible person. Then why you developed the flu? Because if you use mask and if you use hand sanitizers, there is no chance of a flu at this point of time. Because of the transmission dynamics of COVID-19 is something very unique, and it is not easy for us to prevent always, but definitely you can prevent common flu. If you are developing common flu, means you are not taking appropriate precaution to prevent COVID-19. It is not a good sign that you are developing common flu at a season where COVID is spreading. If you are developing common flu, you just think about your behavior and you just think that you are not you are not actually preventing enough the COVID-19. So precisely to that question, unless you are testing, it is almost impossible to know whether it is common cold or flu or COVID.
Thank you, doctor. That is a good information, actually. We never thought of that. One question which is, wearing a mask is good enough for airborne virus? Does airborne virus affect clothes we are wearing and can cause infection?
No. Actually, airborne viruses will not transmitted through clothes. It will actually transmit through air. So if you wear mask, depending upon the quality of that mask, the mask will filter air so that the virus will be out of the air which is actually coming through your mask. If you are using a double layer mask, the airborne infection may not be filtered completely. It will be effective maybe 70 to 80%. There is but chance of getting the 20 to 30% of the particles, small particles present in the air can get inside. If you use an N95, 95% of particles will be kept outside, and again you will get 5% of particles coming inside. If an infection is actually happening purely through air, it is very difficult to prevent it, because even you are using an N95 mask, 5% of particles will come inside. So if it is a purely airborne disease, we do not have much way to control that. But as far as the current evidence, it can happen through air, but in particular locations that we have already explained. But usually this is actually happening through droplets, that is big particles. Your mask will be enough to filter off these particles. That is one thing. Then the question is regarding clothes. The virus can be there in your clothes, but there is actually a little chance that the virus present in your clothes will get inside your mouth or get inside your nose. Even though it is actually getting inside your nose or mouth, the viral load will be much less. Okay, you will not actually put your entire shirt inside your mouth or something like that, but you can put your entire one finger inside your nose. So the chance of getting an infection through your cloth is theoretical. I am not saying that it is impossible. It is possible, but it is not very common. That is why we are not encouraging the just like your say this sanitization, this tunnels and all. You just walk through the tunnel and you are getting sanitized, something like that. That ideas we are not promoting, because these kinds of transmission is much less. Okay, through your maybe your body, maybe your clothes or something like that, any other surfaces. So infections are usually happening from person to person. So you have to take care of other people. You have to take care of your hands, your nose, your mouth, and all these things. So the things are very simple, actually.
Okay, sir. Now, next one question, which is actually...
And again, I will, according to the papers, 10% of infections we do not know the real source of 10% of infections. And in this 10%, something like maybe cloth surfaces, suppose the table in front of you, or these things may be important, but we do not have a solid data out of that. Some people actually studied taking swabs from clothes, swabs from plates, swabs from this table and all. and they could find that RNA of coronavirus present in these swabs. But again, that is not a conclusive evidence, because even after the virus is killed, RNA may be there. So the presence of RNA doesn't mean that these things can transmit disease.
Okay.
Okay.
Doctor, now it's common that we have to get courier packages, newspapers, vegetables, and grocery items from the shop. Will that really cause any infection, or is it really need to wash with soap water? Vegetables and packages has to wash with soap water or sanitation?
There is a paper in Nature exactly answering this question. They are after analyzing the current evidence and so many things, they are actually coming to a conclusion that you take care of your hands. Okay, whenever you suppose a packet of food is actually coming to your home, do not just obsess with the virus that may present on the packet of that food. You keep it in your refrigerator or somewhere. If you keep it in your shelf, you use it, you keep it, and you can wash it maybe just before you are going to use it. For example, if there is vegetables, we just wash it, and just like we do otherwise. If there is no corona also, we will wash the vegetables and use. And if you are handling these things, after handling, you just wash your hands with soap and water. That is enough. So otherwise, the problem is if you are washing it with soap and water, each and every vegetables that is coming to or it is carried to your home, if you have got a practice of washing it, you can, but that may not be having. I don't think there is a value addition for that in terms of prevention of COVID.
Okay, sir. Will it help drinking hot water? Steam inhalation will really stop any infection if it is already infected?
Actually, we do not have solid data on that, but definitely this when we are going to fight against a disease, if you ask to another doctor who is actually coming from a modern medicine stream just like me, if you ask this question, they usually say it is rubbish. But I don't think it is rubbish, because all these things matters, because all these things are coming from a cultural context. So we as people or children, we used to drink hot water while we have got fever, and all these things are there in our mind, and it will help your immunity to boost, definitely. Okay, if you are getting something like podiyedi kanji, we know that porridge is made up of this simple food. You will think that there is a feel good factor. Definitely this feel good factor will act, and there is something known as placebo effect. If you just believe that the hot water is going to help you, definitely it is going to help you. So nothing wrong in trying all these things, but do not actually insist, or do not in an assumption that it is a cure for corona. And suppose a person is going to die because of the disease, don't advise that you need not bother and you just drink hot water and be there at home. Okay, that is the only thing. It is nothing wrong in trying all these things. So many things are there. Some people are actually saying that ginger is actually some immuno booster and it will help you. Some people say that lemon is something like that. So many these kinds of thoughts are there. Nothing wrong in actually experimenting with those things.
Okay, sir. In common, we are staying in a community where a lot of people are staying here. Okay, and we feel that going out for walking, children's playing, sitting in the common areas, these are not allowed, in fact, in many communities. Is it any fact behind that, or scientific fact I'm asking?
That we have actually discussed that this disease is actually transmitted from person to person. Whenever possible, person to person interaction should be reduced. The large chunk of infections are happening among asymptomatic. Asymptomatic transmission is much more. So when suppose 10 children are coming in a close vicinity and they are playing, suppose one child has got the infection and he is not knowing that he has infected, the other children may get infected. It's not a big issue that if the child is infected, because according to the US and European statistics, the chance of death among children, even in infected children, is somewhere around 2 per lakh. 2 per lakh means it's a very small. Okay, even in usual, for example, infant mortality rate in India is somewhere around 35 per thousand. Even in better states like Kerala, it is somewhere around 10 per thousand. That means 10 children are died among 1,000. This is COVID is actually causing something like 2 per lakh, even in infected children. That is US and Europe. In our area, I think it is much less than that. That means the child is not at risk usually, actually. But the problem is the infection will spread to other children, and these children will go to the flat and they may mingle with the other vulnerable people in their homes, especially elderly people and people with comorbidities. And if they are getting infected through these children, the disease may be fatal. So it is actually our responsibility that the knowingly or unknowingly should not allow the disease to spread. So whenever possible, there is something conflicting, that you have to think about the mental health of your children. Playing is actually important for children, but definitely for this point of time, to prevent transmission, better to not allow interaction, this kinds of social interaction between children and between adults. Or better, if you want to play, better you suppose there is 2 children in a family, they can play each other. But whenever you are interacting with others, you are actually opening a door for this disease to transmit. So that is actually a question that I cannot say that yes or no, but there is a chance of spread of the disease.
Okay, how does immunity help in preventing contraction of COVID-19?
Definitely, at a large scale, at an average, your immunity is going to prevent the disease. Sometimes you may not develop symptom at all. Not sometimes. Most often you will not develop symptom at all. If you are got good immunity, the chance of getting the disease is much less. But if you are prone for the disease, if your immunity is low, just like an elderly person or people with comorbidity, the chance of getting the disease severity will be much, much more. But the problem is, even though you are immune, you can act as a carrier of the infection. So you can actually get the infection from somebody. You are immune, so it is not affecting you, but through you, it can actually reach to somebody else. So whether you immune or not, whether you young or old, whether you are susceptible for severe infection or not, better you join in the fight so that our vulnerable people will be saved.
Okay, last question, sir. Current rate in India, what is the current R value? One of the question. And when do you expect a peak if it is spreading at current rate?
Okay, it is very difficult to calculate R value in India, because if you want to calculate R value, the surveillance system should be very strong. Suppose I am infecting 4 of people in my vicinity. If the system in that country is capable enough to detect all these 4, then only the country you can say that the R value is 4. In India, actually, if you calculate your R value, you will get somewhere around 1.9 or something like that. But that is not the actual R value. I think it is because of large chunk of cases are not captured in India, because our systems in most of the states are very poor to find out cases. So what we are actually seeing actually a falsely lowered R value. In almost all other part of the world, the disease has got an R value somewhere around 3. So that India is not an exception. In India also we have got an R value of 3. That is the impression that I am actually getting. What was the second question, Thomas? I was not remembering. You're
No,
not.
at the current rate, when are you expecting the peak?
Okay.
When we'll be able to.
Okay. ICMR has came out with some projection. According to their projection, the peak is going to happen somewhere in first week of September. And for Kerala, we have also got some projections, and our statistics are also predicting the peak is somewhere around first week of September. So we think that September will be the month where we are going to peak. And you have to keep it in your mind that if we are trying to control the outbreak, the peak will be shifted to right-hand side. If the peak is coming very close to you, means the disease is very highly, it is actually virulent, and it is spreading at a much faster rate. That is the meaning of flattening the curve. Flattening the curve means you are actually flattening the elevation of this curve to in future. Okay, suppose in a country the peak is somewhere in February of next year, will be better country compared to a country where it is already peaked in terms of COVID control. So as far as the current statistics in India and in Kerala, in most other part of India, it is going to be peaked in September, maybe initial September, and then the case is going to come.
Sir, what should be the first aid and in case of breathlessness until medical support is available? This is a good one, if this can be answered.
This is actually a question which is difficult to answer because here in COVID, there is a phenomenon which is known as happy hypoxia, that you might have heard about that. Happy hypoxia means usually when you are becoming hypoxic. What is meant by hypoxia? Hypoxia means you are not getting enough oxygen. If you are not getting enough oxygen, you will be feeling very discomfort. But in case of COVID, the extent of discomfort is not in par with the hypoxia the patient is facing. So that can happen. So if suppose you have got COVID and you are not aware of that at all, out of 100 COVID patients, 80 may not be aware of the infection at all, but they can transmit the disease. But the next 20% of them, they will be aware of infection, but they will feel just like a common cold. Okay. Out of this 20 who is actually having a common cold that is lasting for 1 week, maybe around 10 or 5 to 10 of them will be having severe manifestations, and some of them can actually go for the real issues. So suppose you are developing a breathlessness out of any kind of common cold, if you are not an asthmatic, and that means that is actually something like a severe kind of infection you are getting. So first aid, what is first aid means? First aid is actually something you have to do before getting a proper medical aid. That is the word meaning of first aid. Here, what you have mentioned is a medical emergency. So first aid do not have much role in it. And again, as you have already pointed out, you can actually support them with maybe some oxygen, or if it is available, but it is very, very difficult because this is not a situation where you can give some kind of a first aid. The first aid you can do is at any in a very short period of time, you just get him to a hospital. Another thing that we can do is, suppose you have got people in your flat or in your room who are more prone for this disease, and you are suspecting that, okay, in this area there is COVID cases are there, I have got an elderly person in my home, you can buy a machine which is known as pulse oximeter, and this will actually, you can continuously monitor the oxygenation. So that is actually something like your first aid. And if the person is having got a common cold on day 1 and day 2nd or 3rd, you are actually seeing a very high reduction in oxygenation, you just send or carry him to a hospital before there is the dyspnea or the breathlessness arise. So if you develop a breathlessness out of COVID-19, the first aid will not help you much.
Okay, sir. Some people have worried about small children whether they can, hospitals are getting closed or which is filled with COVID patients, how do they give the vaccinations like polio, kind of, whether it will, if they avoid, is there any problem for 8-month-old child?
Okay, this is a very important concern we have. In Kerala, actually, we started the routine vaccination for our children, even in the midst of COVID, because of we have also got this kind of a fear. But in areas where clusters are developing and where these areas were locked down because of COVID, we are not able to provide these vaccination services. But soon after this area is coming out of this threat, we try to give routine vaccinations. The routine vaccination, suppose the person who is asking this question may have a child 8-month-old. Okay, this child has to be given the measles vaccination and maybe polio also, and the child is not able to get the vaccine. So for an individualistic point of view, that is not a big issue at all, because in our country, maybe even in Bangalore or in Kerala, there is no very rampant spread of measles and polio. But the problem is actually in a community level, as so many children are like this, not given routine vaccination, there is a chance of this vaccine preventable disease outbreak in future. Maybe as we are coming out of COVID, our children may develop some kind of vaccine, the vaccine preventable diseases. May not be in Bangalore or in some part of the country, because it's actually a real concern that definitely we have to address these kinds of basic needs even in times of COVID. That is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a reduced chance to contract SARS-CoV-2 if you already have common cold or flu? In this case, does it get worse with both of them, or is the probability of contracting COVID reduced?
Actually, we have got very minimal evidence on the cross-reactivity of COVID-19 and common cold. What a study which was published in Nature, they say that there is some cross-reactivity, but it is not with common cold. They say that suppose you have got COVID, you will be protected because of your T cell activation. T cell activation means there is some cells in your body which is known as memory cells. It is just like suppose you are sitting in your home and a snake is actually coming to the room, and you see that the snake is there and you are hitting it with a stick. And as you are experienced in managing a snake, and the next snake, when the next snake is actually coming to you, you will do something better. So that is mean by your cell-mediated immunity. It is something like a memory T cells. Your body will remember the pathogens that is actually infected you, so that in future you will manage it better. So this will happen in case of COVID-19. That means if you have developed COVID-19, the future infections may be prevented. And cross-reactivity means this kind of a mechanism, is it efficient into another diseases? Suppose I have got some other disease, is it enough to tackle COVID-19? That is the second issue. If you have got SARS and COVID-19, that is SARS coronavirus 1 and SARS coronavirus 2, both are very closely related viruses. Scientists argue that if you have got SARS 1, then you will be sufficiently or partly protected from SARS coronavirus 2. Some people argue that, okay, there is some other viruses which is known as beta coronavirus. Actually, SARS, MERS, this COVID-19, and a few viruses which is causing common flu or to you is actually caused by beta coronavirus, that viral group in which this COVID-19 is actually a part. If you have got a disease from beta coronavirus, according to this Nature paper, they say that you are partly protected from COVID-19. Rather than that, the common cold is not actually protect you. Most of the common cold is not because of beta coronavirus. So if maybe some part of common cold has got a cross-reactivity and a partial protection against COVID-19, but largely it is not.
Sir, one question. If an asymptomatic patient, he do not know actually how long it can exist, how long he can transmit disease. How do you know?
Usually a person, infected person, can transmit for 10 days. 10 days is the maximum period of infectivity that we have noted. But in case of asymptomatic transmission, why this person is asymptomatic? Because his immunity is actually good, so that it is able to prevent the infection. That definitely means that the viral load in these people will be much less compared to a person who is symptomatic. As the viral load is much less, the chance of transmission may be lasting for a few days, maybe 1 day or 2 days. It is not lasting more than, I don't think it will be lasting more than 3 or 4 days. It will be very short, maybe 1 or 2 days. But the problem is, suppose you are symptomatic, you may be giving infection for the next 10 days, but that is fine actually, because as you are becoming symptomatic, you know that you have got symptom. And as we all are actually speaking about COVID-19, you may not go and interact with others. That is one thing. And as you are symptomatic, other people will also recognize that you are symptomatic, and the people will not actually coming to you to interact you. But the asymptomatic, even though the viral load is much less and the duration of the viral shedding is much less, the person is more dangerous, because there is no way we can know that this person is actually harboring infection. So asymptomatic spread, the chance of spreading the disease is much high, even though they do not have high viral load, and the span of shedding the virus is much less compared to a symptomatic person.
For an asymptomatic patient, later stage, nothing can happen like respiratory issues. That will not happen after 3-4 days, right?
Usually not.
Okay, sir. Anybody have any more question? Can we finish the section? No? I think, sir, I think most of the notes are already cleared. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, sir.